Shropshire.
Almost 9 minutes past 8. Now, there was a big announcement from the Health Secretary yesterday. Wes Streeting has commissioned what he's called a rapid investigation into maternity services in England. It comes off the back of scandals like those at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospitals Trust. Here's what he told the Royal College of Gynecologists conference.
Maternity units are failing, hospitals are failing, trusts are failing, regulators are failing. There's too much obfuscation, too much passing the buck and giving lip service, too much shrugging at a cultural problem that we fail to address. Because of that, we have enormously wide race and class inequalities in maternity care.
One of the campaigners for this inquiry is Rhiannon Davis, whose daughter Kate died as a result of poor care by the Trust. She has welcomed the news.
It's clear that Wes Streeting has listened to the families. We had a meeting with him last week with a number of other families, at which he explained what he was going to say today in his announcement, and it was very, very different from what we've heard today. He clearly listened to us when we told him that what he was proposing was nowhere near enough, as well as the national, well, it's not a national, it's an England independent investigation. He's going to set up a national maternity and neonatal task force that he's going to chair. It's not only going to have independent clinical and international expertise, it's also going to bring in families like mine to be able to influence the work that is going to be done. So he's listened, he's made a massive step forward, but obviously there are families today in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland who of course will be championing this, but it hasn't gone far enough because it doesn't include them, it doesn't include the learning and the accountability that they so desperately need as well.
Well, the Rev'd Charlotte Cheshire's son Adam was left severely disabled as a result of an infection he developed after his birth at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. And Reverend Charlotte Cheshire is with me now on the show. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think of this announcement?
I think undoubtedly we do need answers to the scandal that's going on with maternity care realistically across the UK. So the simple fact of announcing an investigation is a good start, but personally I don't think this goes nearly far enough. I'm partially concerned about the timescale that Mr. Streeting has announced of wanting to get some answers by Christmas, because the scale of this across so many trusts in England is so huge that I think 6 months is aspirational at best. I think this needs to go even further. I think what we need is full public inquiry. And as Rhiannon said, I think it needs to be not just England, but across the UK.
In the short term, do you see it making much difference?
Oh, certainly. I think it has the potential to be better than nothing, because realistically, we've already seen Morecambe Bay. We've obviously seen Shrewsbury and Telford, of which I was a part. We are currently seeing Nottingham and the developing situation in Leeds. So we need something. So it is a good start. And Mr. Streeting has made some improvements from his original plan to go forward towards an investigation. But we've already had Donna Ockendon's review with all of her essential actions that was announced 3 years ago now that should have made a measurable difference. But it would appear that it hasn't, because they're not being held to account. And I think it's a public inquiry that has the potential for health bosses to have to testify under oath and to then be accountable in law before their actions.
What do you think that would lead to? What do you think would happen if that were to go ahead?
I think ultimately it's something that would then have the potential to make changes in law as opposed to just a goodwill scenario. Because when Donna Ockendon announced her results of her investigation into Shrewsbury 3 years ago, the government at the time wholeheartedly accepted all of the recommendations that she was giving. And yet, 3 years on, we're still in the scenario of more scandals, more deaths, more harm coming to light. So I think there needs to be something where the government really can hold people to account. And I just fear that a fast-moving 6-month investigation doesn't go far enough. I think we need more.
You've asked to meet Wes Streeting. I know you haven't yet, but what's the first thing you're saying to him?
Well, I think the first thing fundamentally is that I think he needs to come and actually sit down with a wider group of Shrewsbury families, because there were a couple of us, Rhiannon and Kaylee, who were invited to the meeting a few weeks ago. But so far, despite continuous invitations, he hasn't actually come to meet with a wider group of us. So when he's announcing that he's spent the last year talking to bereaved and harmed families, well, He's talked to some, but he certainly hasn't talked with the majority or even a large group from Shrewsbury. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think this needs to be, any insight into the maternity scandal has to be UK-wide, not just England. And I also think it has to go a step further from an investigation, a fast-moving investigation, which could skate over the surface to a full inquiry, because we've already had years-long investigations that haven't produced measurable change. So I just think he needs to go further to a full inquiry that actually has teeth.
You talk about years-long. Is that part of the frustration, the timescale, the glacial movement, I suppose, in terms of getting where you want to get to?
It is, certainly. I mean, on a personal level, my son was born in 2011, and I contacted a medical negligence solicitor for the first time in 2014. Even now, in 2025, I am still in the middle of that judicial process. It takes such a long time to get answers. When we look at what happened with Donna Ockendon's review, admittedly, that was impacted by the pandemic in terms of the length, but that also was years long. So we've got a scenario where health bosses have potentially retired, potentially moved on to other, even more senior posts, and they haven't been held accountable. And I think a public inquiry has the potential to do that and needs to do that.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this morning. The Reverend Charlotte Cheshire with us on The Breakfast Show here on BBC Radio Shropshire. Of course, have your say on anything we're talking about this morning. If you want to get in touch, 08000 321 333 on WhatsApp, and make sure you start your message with the word Shrop. Almost 16 minutes past 8 here on Breakfast. In other news this morning, President